Yes.
Something tough. So we're standing in the Church of Nativity, as I said. The structure that we see around us, it's Justinian primarily, but Constantine was the first to build the basilica on the suggestion of his mother, Helen, and what remains from his structure are the floors under that wooden floor. There's a mosaic floor which you should look at, and you can go one by one to look at it, and we'll still keep the place in line, because that's the oldest part of the entire church, and it was discovered fairly recently when a repair needed to be done, and they found this beautiful mosaic floor, which hasn't been renovated. It's original. You'll see that swastika. That's the Byzantine cross. It's abstract. That also indicates that it's a very old mosaic. There are no pictures of birds or animals like we saw up in Tabka. So that's the oldest part of the church. You can see that a lot of it's under reconstruction or renovation, and that's nothing compared to what it's been for the last 2 years. For the last 2 years, this entire area has been completely covered, including all the mosaics and everything. It was all under scaffolding. And that's because 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, the church was, to put it mildly, in a state of complete decay. I was here 2.5 years ago in the winter. It was raining outside, and the water was just dribbling here as we stood in line, and it was freezing, and it was dark, and you just felt like any moment it's going to collapse. And that's because of the status quo. I haven't introduced that concept yet. It's a very, very important concept to understand about how things are run in the Holy Land. It's called the status quo. It's a rule of law. It's something that the Ottoman Sultan determined. He wrote a law in order to organize the infighting amongst the different church communities, and said after this point nothing will be changed. I'm dividing the church according to communities. The hour of worship is according to certain hour plan, and nothing can be changed from that time. That's about 150 years ago, and since that time nothing can be changed. But as a result, it was impossible to decide who takes the responsibility or gets the honor of renovation. So they never did renovations. No one could come to an agreement about who does what. If you want to see on YouTube what kind of fighting goes on between the communities, it's not nice, but that's what goes on between the Franciscans and the Greek Orthodox, who gets to sweep which part of which brick. They come to blows, the monks. Status quo, I'm going to be repeating this a lot in Jerusalem, the word status quo, because it means everything has to stay the same. Nothing can change. And the reason why he did that was because a war broke out between two Christian communities in Jerusalem about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So he said, I'm making the law, and this is what you have to follow so that we don't have this constant battle. It still has an impact until this day, and I'll talk about that also. In Jerusalem, just 2 weeks ago, the whole Church of the Holy Sepulchre shut down because they claimed that Israel was changing the status quo. It's a nice word to throw out and say you're changing the status quo, and then everyone has to bow down and say, okay, we're not going to change the status quo. It's like the holy of holies. Okay. But then about 2 years ago, the site was recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, and that brought in foreign money to renovate it, so that it wasn't anybody's particular responsibility, but a general responsibility. And then everything went under scaffolding, and it was renovated primarily by Italians that came in, experts. And I'll tell you, 2.5 years ago, when those mosaics, they were visible, but they were really invisible because they were completely black. You could barely tell they were mosaics because of all the oil lamps and all the candles, and everything was just soot. Everything was black. The ceiling was rotten, just about to collapse. And these pillars that you see here are magnificent and very special because they have wax pictures of the prophets. They're made from wax. That's not paint. That's one of the only places I've seen this, wax, and that you couldn't see them. It was all black because of the soot and all the dirt and the gold icons. Everything was very dark and dank here. And now these mosaics, they're from the Crusader period, but they've just opened them up, in fact, just this last week. Half of it was invisible, and now they're taking down all the covers, so now it's all visible. It's really, I'm sure they're getting it ready, for But anyway, it's
Was this
magnificent. Pardon?
pews? This was a church?
No, there are no pews in an Orthodox church. Until 1967, things were a little bit changed, but in the most traditional Orthodox church, you stand for hours and hours and hours and hours.
So the service would be...
The service today takes place up there, where the icons are.
Congregants would come in here and just stand.
They even stand up there, but now there's seats there too, because the Orthodox church is in the left section of the church. This is an Orthodox church.
So what
Russian
would be
Orthodox
taking place in the grand
People
hall?
stand. They'll stand. There are no pews.
Right now, pillars
So you're
on
saying
the
this
wall.
wall was put in over that?
Rick, that's
Yes.
not a
It's
good
over
idea.
there?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's not a good idea.
You know what?
We don't
a
want-
whole lot less
fall
people
asleep.
were brought to a peaceful state of rest.
Okay, so when we came in, we went through a little area. That's Armenian. This is Orthodox,
Oh my
talking
goodness.
Christian Orthodox. Then the Armenians have another chapel. This basilica is only divided between the Orthodox and the Armenians. There's a separate church for the Catholics, which is called St. Catherine's, it's built onto this one next door. But it's a Crusader era church, and that's the Catholics' church, and they have grottos underneath the church as well, and the Christmas Mass is celebrated in the Catholic Church. They go down underground to the grottos and bring a figure of baby Jesus to the place of the birth in the grotto here. But it all takes place underground.
Wow.
To illustrate to you status quo, I was here with an Austrian group. 3 years ago, it was freezing cold. We'd been traveling together for a week. It was a huge pilgrim of the Catholics of Austria coming. So for the entire month of February, busload after busload, we had hundreds of buses every week. And I was assigned, I was working for an agency, and they gave me the choir just by chance, and it was my great luck because they were amazing. It was an amazing musical week. They sung not only religious songs, but the entire week in the bus was singing, and it was beautiful. And then we stood here, we were waiting, 2 hours we were waiting, and the choir master then, he was a pretty young guy, said, well, why don't we sing something? We were standing literally right here. It was dark, it was cold, it was the last day. And I said, sure, go ahead. And they started to sing. And immediately, within 2 seconds, a policeman was practically strangling me. I was a Palestinian. And all he did was tell me, look at me and said, status quo, in a really nasty way, and said, you should know that. And now you guys can just go.
No.
So I said, no, please, it was just a mistake. My fault. So he let us stay, but they were Catholics singing in the Orthodox section at a time of day that wasn't allowed in an area that was not allowed for Catholics to sing. So that was that. That's the status quo. That's one illustration.
Huh.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah.